Hi there, I'm Amber Brown, Director of Learning Strategies for PLX Learning Solutions, where we help organizations improve their workforce capability and adaptability by transforming L&D strategy into business strategy. In working with and speaking to our clients and other L&D leaders, one of the most pressing issues in the industry today is how to prove an ROI or improve the impact of the learning function within the organization. So let's dive right in. So in today's talk, we're going to discuss why ROI is broken in L&D, the equation that's used to calculate a financial ROI, aligning learning outcomes with business metrics, how your team's learning maturity impacts what you measure, and also cover 5 steps that you can start using today to measure impact and ROI now. So let's get honest about something. Most L&D teams aren't lacking effort. They're actually just lacking impact. We're measuring activity, completions, attendance, satisfaction scores, but those only tell us that a class occurred, not even that learning happened or whether anything changed as a result of the learning initiative. And honestly, these are great metrics to track, but these are things that we need to keep and hold in-house and have those conversations within our L&D teams, not necessarily something that needs to be communicated outward. Because simply in today's business environment, there's just not enough information. Executives aren't looking for proof that training was delivered, they're looking for evidence that it moved the needle on performance, capability, or business goals. So that's the gap, not between training and completion, but rather between training and real results. So here's a question to consider. Are your metrics aligned with what the business values or just what's easy to track? Something to consider. Now let's talk directly about ROI. Of course, ROI is important, and we should be able to speak to the return that the organization is receiving on its investment in learning. ROI is not mysterious. At its core, the financial ROI is a basic formula. Performance gain minus the cost of the intervention or training cost divided by the training cost and times 100 to get a percentage. But most teams skip the performance part and focus only on the financial costs, which are both equally important. Learning initiatives should capture and speak to finances as well as the impact it has on the organization, especially in areas like leadership development, onboarding, compliance, or cultural transformation. Some non-financial metrics you can and should track to show value, including time to proficiency. Are new hires ramping up faster? Error rates. Are people performing more accurately after training initiatives? Employee retention. Are trained employees staying longer? Internal mobility. Are learning programs helping people get promoted? Customer satisfaction. Are frontline teams improving the customer experience? And also, engagement and culture indicators are also very key aspects. Are managers communicating better? Are teams more aligned? Now, these metrics may not always tie to immediate dollars, but they directly influence productivity, risk, and business sustainability, which absolutely have value in both the short and long term. So now we're going to take a look at a couple of examples calculating that financial ROI. So first, a simple example. You invest $100K in a sales enablement program. As a result, the team brings in $200K in additional revenue. So let's use a formula to walk step by step into calculating that ROI. You have your performance gain, which is the $200,000 that the sales team brought in, minus the cost of the training, which was $100. So 200 minus 100 is 100K divided by that 100K of the training cost. And again, we want a percentage, so we multiply by 100, and our ROI is 100%, which is awesome, fantastic. That's not just a success story. That's data you can present to the CFO. Now, I ask you to think about your last initiative. Did you calculate a financial ROI? If not, why? Now let's look at a little bit more of a realistic example without perfect numbers. You invest $60,000 into revamping your customer service onboarding, new curriculum, delivery platform, and trainer support included. Within 90 days, your time to proficiency drops from 12 weeks to 8, and early turnover decreases by 15%. That efficiency saves the company an estimated $90K in onboarding cost and lost productivity. So let's look at calculating the ROI now. So the performance gain from this initiative was $90,000. And we're going to subtract the $60,000 of the training cost, which gives us $30,000. And again, we divide that by the cost of the training, which was $60,000, and we multiply that by 100. So here, the ROI is 50%, but also, just as importantly, a measurable impact on retention, speed, and performance. Now, that's the kind of data business leaders care about. So let's think back. Did your last initiative show these kind of results? Did you include a financial ROI as well as impact? If not, did you try to measure them? So let's bring it back to the foundation. Every learning initiative should tie back to a specific business outcome, something that directly supports performance, capability, or growth. It's not enough to say 500 people completed training. We need to be able to say, here's how this learning changed something that matters. 85% of the 500 collection agents trained increased the dollars collected per customer for 3 months post-training. Now that's something that will get the business and executives excited. For example, sales training should improve close rates or average size deals. Onboarding should decrease time to proficiency and reduce early turnover. Leadership programs should increase the number and quality of internal promotions. The key is to start with the business metric, not the content. Ask yourselves, what is the business trying to achieve? What capability gap is holding us back? How will we know if our solution made a difference? If we can't clearly articulate that connection, we're not ready to launch. The bottom line is, if learning doesn't move the metrics that matter to the business, it won't matter to the business. So these are a few additional metrics by business that you can use as an example. And you can see here we have sales conversion rates, revenue per salesman, a customer service, resolution time, customer satisfaction scores, first time resolution, reduced complaints, collections, reduction in delinquent accounts, increased recovery rates, healthcare, patient satisfaction, reduced wait times, improved treatment adherence. So various metrics that we can apply to ensure that our training has impact on the organization and is returning value. Now let's talk about learning maturity, because where your team is on the maturity curve directly impacts what you can measure, influence, and improve. Now let me be clear. Maturity isn't about how long your team has existed. It's not about age. It's about how intentionally and strategically your team operates within the business. In the early stages, teams are often limited to tracking learning activities, completions, participation, satisfaction. It's basic, but that's where most teams start. And as maturity grows, so does your capacity to measure and deliver real outcomes. Things such as performance metrics, retention, time to proficiency, and organizational agility. Our 6 stages of growth model charts this path from reactive order takers to proactive, data-driven learning organizations. Here's the core principle. The more mature your team, the closer your metrics are to business performance, not just learning activity. So here, I want to share a quick story from the field. And this is a real example. We worked with a financial services client who was facing a common but costly issue, early attrition due to onboarding, or during onboarding, I should say. New hires were overwhelmed, disengaged, and leaving before hitting productivity milestones. So their onboarding program was long, content heavy, and lacked a clear connection to what success looks like in the role. So we helped them rethink it completely. Instead of a fire hose of information, we built a phased experience with skill validation and checkpoints, allowing employees to prove mastery before moving forward. And as a result, time to productivity dropped by 30% in just 60 days. Retention jumped 12% within 90 days. That's measurable ROI that the business is looking for. So another client, actually a Fortune 500 company, financial organization, they had a customer care team that was responsible for resolving account issues, fraud concerns, and general inquiries. And they came to us seeking help with identifying an ROI. So they had a solid training program. Now let me back up and say, typically when our team goes in to review and to do an analysis on what's going on, we typically may find issues with the content itself or how to better shape the content. But here it was, the content was solid. It was amazing. And so I was really confused as to why there was no ROI. Well, come to find out, the team had access to data. They just did not pull it. So they were sitting on a gold mine. They had average call times, call handling times, call satisfaction scores, escalation rates, even regional trends that they had access to. And so we were able to help put those systems in place to help them to come in and use that information to tell a compelling business story. So we helped them to connect the dots, which tied the training completions that they'd already completed in with the outcomes of the training, which managers were seeing better results and where to focus coaching. Now look at these results. Escalations dropped by 19% for teams that have been trained on. Customer satisfaction increased 11% over the next quarter after being trained. And the support costs dropped due to first call resolutions. So, again, they had the information there. They had the strong content. They had the data. They just weren't pulling the right content for to be able to prove their impact or the ROI that the training was actually providing to the organization. And so for the first time, as a result of this, the executive team saw L&D as a performance partner, not just as a cost center. And data, again, the data was always there. The strategy just to use it wasn't. And so we helped solidify that and clarify that. This kind of data increases L&D impact. So if you can pull these metrics in addition to the financial ROI, you're golden. So here are 5 steps you can take starting today to actually start measuring or increasing your ROI. The first step is to define a business problem before designing a solution. Now, I know we normally go in and you do a training needs analysis and you figure out what the objective is, but go a little higher with that. Instead of the organization coming to you or the business function saying, we need training, we need to change that conversation to, we need to improve X business outcome. You should tie every initiative to a specific performance or operational need. If it's something that the business is asking for that is not directly a performance that the organization is targeting, you might want to put that on a back burner as a nice to have, not something that definitely needs to move forward. The second thing here is to set clear, measurable learning objectives. What behaviors should change? What should improve? Spell it out. For example, decrease average call handling times by 15% within 90 days. That's something that we can target before we begin creating the content for it. And so here for number 3 is to establish a baseline. You need to know your before you're able to measure the after. What are your current numbers or historical data for the metric you're trying to move? And I just want to pop in here because I have a personal story here that I know one team was asking for the L&D team to recreate a training that had already been done. They wanted them to modify it and put it back out. And so in looking at, you want to capture the cost of the training initiative, right? Because at that point, we've already rolled it out. Do you want us to redo it, which means we're going to go back and we're going to incur more costs? Well, show me first that it's not working. And they actually didn't have the data. So I went and pulled the data myself to go find it, because I want to make sure that if I'm going to put out a training, it's worth the time and effort that my team is going to put forward to create it. And what we found was the data showed that the original training actually was a success. The call agents handled the specifics that we targeted in that particular training 6 months after training. Those numbers stay consistent. So when they started to dip, the question wasn't whether or not the agents knew what to do. The training held. It was actually an accountability issue within the business management. So that's one thing I want to say right there. Make sure you go and pull the historicals before. When the business comes to you and say, hey, we're having this problem, we need more training, you need to be able to validate that. Validate that it is an actual training need and that you're not going to be wasting your budget on training costs. So moving on, number 4, is also to use comparisons for pre or post data or control groups. Compare performance before and after training, which is critical to me. I think that's very first thing that you should do at the end of any training content, and hold it for 90 days. So you want to compare the performance before and after, and also between teams that have been trained and untrained. That way you're able to justify the cost of your training, as well as be able to prove the impact that you've had on the organization. And number 5, definitely track your cost and calculate your value. Include your time, resources, platforms used, facilitators, then quantify those gains using the metrics we mentioned before, such as productivity, sales, retention, etc. And then compare. Even if it's imperfect, taking these steps will definitely get you closer to clarity on what your ROI is on those training initiatives and the impact that you've brought to the team. So some ROI boosters are quick wins that you can definitely implement now. Clarify your success measures upfront. Don't wait until the end to ask, did it work? Align with business partners early on so that you define what that success looks like, such as performance improvement, reduce rework, faster ramp up. You make sure that you have that ready. Don't let them come to you to ask. Also, automate and integrate your data. It will save you so much more time if you don't have to go and pull the information manually. Connect your LMS, your HRIS, performance tools, like I mentioned earlier, probably Tableau and some other Power BI tools. Pull those meaningful metrics, such as time to proficiency, engagement trends, KPI shifts, so that you don't have to go and do it manually. Also, report in the language of the business. Translate your learning results into the business impact. Instead of saying 87% completed the course, say service errors dropped by 20% in teams that completed the course. That way, business leaders aren't focused on how many people you're pulling from their floor or their work pool to train. You're actually focusing on the impact, and you're keeping them streamlined on that impact. Now, again, that 87% that completed the course, that is critical for you to keep in-house and, be focused on, but that's not something that should be communicated out to the business. Forget the participation rates. Hold that data inside. Speak to the actual performance. Don't be afraid to remove what's not working, meaning stop delivering what's not providing impact. My team has a matrix, I equals E squared. So impact equals engagement times effectiveness. And so it's a matrix that helps you determine which of your courses you should keep, which ones you could probably modify to increase, and then which ones you should sunset. Don't be afraid to sunset the ones that aren't working. If they aren't working, take them to your curriculum, because all you're doing is bringing down your ROI, and you want to always produce something positive. So these are some quick 4 boosters, quick wins that you can implement to begin increasing your ROI. And this is how L&D earns a seat at the table. So, two key takeaways. You can't improve what you don't measure, and you can't measure what wasn't aligned from the start. That's the key. Also, ROI is not just a financial number. It's a reflection of strategic thinking, learning maturity, and impact. Of course, I have one final question or challenge for you is to think of what's one thing that you can do this week to clarify your team's impact or ROI. I want you to think about it and look at it and let me know. So next step, we ask that you join us for our live Q&A and strategy session on Thursday, May 8th at 11:30 Central for a quick lunch and learn strategy session. Well, we'll unpack all of your ROI challenges, talk through how to operationalize this in your company, and answer questions specific to your learning maturity stage. If you don't know where your team stands in the learning maturity stage, you can always access our free quiz. It's just 15 quick questions. Find your current learning maturity at www.6stagesofgrowth.com/quiz. And I thank you for attending today. Here's all of my contact information, phone number, email address, company website, and always feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn at Amber Brown Learning. Thanks, and have a great afternoon.